All three judges, we have both teams, everybody's here. Any questions? Do we have a judge with a timing device?
Yes. I have one.
Would you be so kind as to time this round?
Alright.
All right, we do have a timer, and fortunately she's right
I
in
have
the
a question.
center. Yes?
Do you have something regarding judging philosophy at all? Like,
Do you want to share?
you want to share, yeah.
I'm about as tabula rasa as they get, so.
Fair enough. And one more thing, how comfortable are you with us talking to each other while somebody is speaking or a cross-examination?
I think we did discuss this at our training session, and they are not going to allow that at this point. So I
Like,
think
we should not discuss it between us at all.
No, that's cross-examination, talking during.
No, like, can we discuss between ourselves while we're
Absolutely.
yeah. that-
Absolutely, when you're at the desk, you talk away and everything, but I think they're going, and I think they should or will be announcing that when he's doing the cross-section, he can't.
Okay.
I'll show you like 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, and half a minute left. Then I'm done.
Полусложна говорница, нужна маса.
Whenever you're ready, I can start. Good day. We as the affirmative side in this debate will strive for freedom of the internet. So for the freedom of people to be able to access information on the internet and to post stuff freely on the web. So we will show you the need of the people, how this policy fulfills those needs, and this policy is legitimate because of that. So let's define the motion. So we believe that a country, a sovereign country from a foreign country can do this as a foreign policy measure in another country where, to free the internet of the other country. So provide internet circumventing method, like giving proxy servers or anything similar. So we will only speak about the countries that are on the internet enemies list by the Reporters Without Borders, which are Bahrain, Belarus, Burma, China, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam. So first of all, let's see why the internet as the medium. So it's the freest of them all. It's the least biased, and when free, you can post everything and everyone can see what you do. So 2.5 billion people around the world use the internet, and 70% of them use it daily. So on the internet, you can be heard, you can express yourselves, and you can fulfill your right of freedom of expression, which leads me to our first argument, which is human rights. So first of all, I speak about freedom of expression, and then later on, I will refer to freedom of choice and the right of development. So where the information is hidden from the people is to protect the regime or the government or eliminate political opponents. It simply suppresses the right of freedom of expression. So people in those countries cannot fulfill their freedom of expression, and the freedom of expression is one of the core pillars of democracy, and I'll explain this later on. So in the countries where extreme internet censorship is applied, like countries like Burma or similar, people cannot voice political concern. And why is this bad? Because the political opposition in those countries is almost non-existent, because people cannot express what they think about the certain government or the ruling body, and the government is the one that is not afraid of the people, and the people are the people are the side that are afraid from the government. So in our case, we create a mass that is able to criticize the government through anonymous posting on the internet, because they now have free internet that they can use in order to go against the government in the opposition. Later on, the difference in those countries, in the oppressed countries that I was speaking about, and liberal democratic countries, is that in liberal democratic countries you can voice your concerns against the government through institutions and through mass media or social media or any kind of media that there is. And in those countries I'm speaking about right now, the oppressed countries, internet enemies list countries, you cannot say anything that goes against the government. In liberal countries you can punish the government by not going out on the next election and voting for them, or just vote for another party. And in those countries, you can do absolutely nothing. And the internet as a media kind of helps solve this problem, because people can criticize the government and create a sort of opposition in those countries. That is the first step of democracy. Later on, let's speak a bit about the freedom of choice and the right to development. They have a low number of information. They have selected information that are provided for them. I am speaking about the people in the oppressed countries, And they have less information to pick from, so their freedom of choice is infringed. Let's see a green tea example. If I have been drinking green tea for my entire life, and I've never seen what peach tea looks like, of course green tea would be the best tea for them. And that's what happens with them, with everything, like religion, like sexual orientation, and everything there is. They sometimes have to be Muslim, and sometimes have to be Christian, because they have never seen anything else. They have never seen the option of being something else in their lives. So, choice gives you the right of development. No matter what you choose to do with your choice, it gives you experience, it gives you knowledge, and this, by giving you a knowledge and experience, this fulfills your freedom, your right of personal and development. So, thus people are less framed by the government, which is happening right now. The government are giving them selected information, which are information suited to suit the government. So they help the government and the regime the people are living in. And right now, people have no choice to see the other side of the deal, the other side of the problem. So with more information available to them, people will have more experience and more knowledge, as I stated. Thus, they will be able to see what's out there and what the world says, not just their government, the government that feeds them information that the government wants them to hear, and nothing else in this world. So let's now speak a bit about the legitimacy of this thing as a foreign policy. Let's see who has sovereignty and who doesn't have sovereignty. When a country breaks human rights, like these countries do, they lose their sovereignty by the United Nations. And the United Nations preamble states that when a country breaks human rights that they have signed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, other countries have the moral obligation to go there and use even force to promote those human rights. So the countries in the West, the countries that are not these 11 countries that I have mentioned, have the moral obligation to help the countries in need, because of two reasons. First of all, they're signatories to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and they're a member of the United Nations. And second of all, they've been helping human rights all throughout history. So it's a legitimate measure for them to help human rights right now with this measure that is not invasive and it doesn't bring physical harm at all. So, and second point is that the people need the support of the international community because they are not educated enough themselves to be able to free the internet by themselves. So, and even if they try to, even if they have the education to do so, they will probably be hung on a public square somewhere because they have gone against the regime with this measure. And finally, it is already being done as a foreign policy matter. The US funds more than $25 million per year for this, and the UK funds more than £5 million for this. So it's already being done as a foreign policy measure, and the world accepts it as such. And finally, we're not saying that every single country in the world should do and will do this measure. We're just saying that supporting human rights in those countries when internet freedom is infringed is a legitimate foreign policy tool. Thank you.
we go to the pedestal.
Very graceful.
Better way than any.
Oh yeah. Irish formality. Couple of questions. Ignorance is often said to be bliss. Do you think a country living in ignorance is better than a country full of people running around protesting and dying and being shot?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes, okay. You do. If you were told by some random foreigner that your dad, who you thought had died peacefully of a heart attack, had been tortured and shot brutally to death, would you be angry?
He would still be dead. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. He's alive.
You wouldn't be angry if
Thank
you
God.
found out that your father was murdered. You wouldn't be angry at all.
I'm not sure. It'd probably be a little angry, but he's
So you
still
would be
dead,
angry,
so the
okay.
consequence is the same thing.
So you would be angry.
He-
Okay.
but he's
Do you
alive,
believe that
he's alive.
do you believe that death and dying and chaos is a good thing?
No?
No. So do you think that
It's the same thing.
So-
Dying in one manner or another, it's the same thing.
So do you think that if this ignorance can be broken in a way that does not cause death and dying due to, say, careless release of information?
I never said
would be
that
better?
ignorance should be broken.
Sorry?
I never said that ignorance should be broken at first.
Yes, you did. You say you want to inform these people.
No. Oh, yeah, wait.
That's kind of
Can you-
that was kind of your whole speech.
Yeah, can you repeat the question?
Okay.
Sorry.
Do you think that if this ignorance can be broken without mobs running around the street shooting people, that it would be better?
Yeah, that's what our case does.
Cool. Information makes you angry, and you agree that anger is not good. Second,
Information
second
does
thing.
not make you
second
angry
thing.
all the times.
Okay.
Like,
We've all heard.
How do we connect my father dying from torture with this, with internet censorship?
Because if you find out that all your relatives have been tortured to death, you're going to be angry at the state, and you're going to want to.
So when those people there have internet, you're saying that the people that they will go.
I'm the boss here. I'm the boss here. Okay.
If you
We've
say
all heard
so.
about the Boston killings recently. Okay. Why do you think that they were a violation of human rights?
Can you repeat the question?
We've all heard of the Boston bombings
Okay.
at the Boston Marathon. Do you think they were a violation of human rights?
Yes, because they kill people.
Okay. Why do you think the Irish government didn't immediately devote all its resources to catching the killer?
Because it's not worth it in that case.
Because it's not worth it.
But all the resources, the European Union and the US always trade, and the US gets great financial benefits from the European Union, and Ireland too. So Ireland kind of helped the US.
So Ireland kind of shrugged and said, "Oh yeah, we'll kind of give them a help," because the importance of the
Yeah,
Irish
I'm not
citizen
sure.
is
I'm
more
not sure
important to
about
Ireland
USA, but
than the importance of the
Macedonia is
American
not
citizen.
even in NATO, and Macedonia sent troops in Afghanistan and Iraq. It's not even in NATO. People help.
Yeah, cool. Next thing, you say that this circumventing and censorship is already done and it's already accepted by the international community. Do you think that means it's a good thing?
Usually, what's accepted by the international community is a good thing.
Third
Like
world countries
promoting
are-
human rights is a good thing.
Third world countries are constantly exploited by bigger nations. Do you think that's a good thing?
Yeah,
that's
the
accepted.
world
That's
doesn't.
already
No,
done.
it's not accepted
But
by
there's nothing
everyone.
people can do about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's not accepted by everyone.
I think our time's up. Is it? Yeah.
Hello, I'm Cian, and with my partners Tig and Ronan, I'll be making the case for the negative. Firstly, this is an argument primarily about human rights, yes, but also about what relates to human rights, sovereignty and imperialism. I'll be bringing in three main points today. My partners will debate on some of them. Firstly, sovereignty, as I've said. Secondly, stability. And third, what kind of foreign policy we want. Whether we want a foreign policy based on trust and benevolence, or whether we want a foreign policy based on competition and backbiting. Firstly, sovereignty. The unit of democracy is the nation state. Even if a country isn't democratic, the most important institution in any country is the government, because the only institution that has any kind of responsibility for the people of a country is the government. A foreign government doesn't have any responsibility for people. A foreign government doesn't have more responsibility than a native government, even if that government has come to power illegitimately. So, sovereignty, what about it? We believe that sovereignty equates with human rights precisely because of this. When another country intervenes in a country's affairs, then it's an affront to democracy, because it's an affront to sovereignty. when a foreign government, which will only be following its interests and will very likely not be caring in any way about the citizens of the country in which is being targeted, intervenes in that country, it's going to cause a problem. For instance, as an example, in Venezuela in 2002, a democratically elected government was overthrown by a coup in which the media was extremely important. The electronic media was extremely important. At that time it was TV and radio, but now it could easily be the internet. This was orchestrated by the CIA. The coup didn't work because of popular protests. The people didn't want it. But if it had succeeded, then a repressive regime would easily have been put in place. This foreign intervention is very, very unlikely to be equated with democracy in the most genuine sense, because if a country is intervening and propping up a democratic regime, then it's probably for PR. If the US intervenes and, say, overthrows a dictator and props up a democratic regime, it's probably for credibility, because they can't really call themselves Democrats when they're not propping up democratic regimes, but often they do prop up dictators. For instance, another example, in Iraq, a functioning state, yes, a dictatorial one, yes, an oppressive one, but a functioning state which had a health service, an education service, and provisions of all basic rights, was replaced with anarchy, was replaced with one of the most corrupt places on the planet, where almost nothing functions and where all the infrastructure has been destroyed. That proves that intervention isn't always benign. And this type of intervention would be exactly the same. You're causing instability, you're making an affront to sovereignty, and therefore it's against human rights, it's not for human rights. Secondly, stability. Like I said, the government is the only institution in the world, the government of a country is the only institution in the world that has the responsibility for the people of that country. The government is responsible for stability. In this way, even if the government isn't democratic, again, the people's and the government's interests overlap. Because the government wants stability, the people want stability. No one wants anarchy, everyone wants some type of order. But when you have these organizations, when you have the organizations that could be helped by this foreign policy, and I do want to equate, it is foreign policy. It's not kind of a, this isn't endemic revolution. This is revolution being imported, and you can't import revolution if people want to improve their society, overthrow their government, develop their country. They have to do it themselves. It can't be imposed because it doesn't work. It's never sincere. It always causes something that isn't in any way better, or that isn't much better. Stability, my partner is going to develop on that, but basically, as you can obviously see, it can cause anarchy, and no one wants anarchy. Last of all, what kind of world do we want? Most people would say we want a peaceful world, a world that is both just and peaceful. But how are we going to achieve a peaceful world? When we have governments that are consistently competing with each other, that are consistently spying on each other, that are always backbiting, trying to get around each other, circumventing each other's laws, then you don't have a foreign policy that's based on trust. The 20th century, if there's one thing it should teach us, it's that this kind of atmosphere, the kind of atmosphere where countries are constantly competing, is wrong and it's unhealthy. The First World War and the Second World War and many other wars besides, and they caused many other wars besides as well, were caused by this kind of atmosphere, as well as other things such as imperialism and ideology. But if we have a functioning kind of international system based on cooperation, based on trust, based on benevolence, not on competition, not on breaking other countries' laws, not on spying on them, then we have a more stable world. We have a world that is more peaceful. We have a world without wars. We have a world, well, where wars are less likely. I don't want to be too idealistic, but as anyone can see, it's obviously much better. Last of all, I hope you don't mind me leaving my rebuttal to the end, but just because the USA and Britain do something doesn't mean it makes it right. The USA, as I've said, orchestrates coups, props up wrong, unjust regimes, bombs and kills Iraqi babies in cities that had never anything to do with politics. And Britain trains death squads all across the global south. So you can't really claim that just because these countries, which call themselves democratic, do something, it doesn't make it right. Thank you for listening to me.
Аз имам две прашања.
Знам како.
И аз имам усвари три прашања. Вие имате прашања?
Вака.
Пушти.
Did the people, дали луѓето во Ирак не сакаа револуција пред да се деси, или Америка своеволно и Афганистан своеволно направи инвазија, физичко, односно воен.
Што одговорат?
Говорот е, ако луѓето сакале, не е точно, затоа што никој не сакаше да тоа настана телевизија. Ако каже дека луѓето не сакале, тоа што ова е различно од тоа што го правиме ние. Ние им даваме,
Да, тоа го.
ама
Да. Добро, продолжи.
дали верува дека сувереноста на една држава
Било ми снимањето.
нема. Дали верува дека сувереноста на една држава не сме никогаш да се скрши?
Сувереност на нека држава.
Никогаш. Дали се согласувате? Дека треба да бидат untouchable.
Добро, после?
Јован, за последното видење на това. Дали во Саудитска Арабија не се убиваат бебиња, не се сечат глави и не се сечат раце? За
Барам
крадење.
одговората.
Не, одговор ако ти каже да, окей, ако ти каже не, прашам само дали е сигурен, остај.
Ти?
Значи, они според нас влада и која влада не е на свет. Дали си баш те што прави влада добро, дали може да заista лоши, дали ако не така то human rights, дали се добро или лоши, дали се легитимни, ако не си избрани, нешто така да. За легитимност на влада.
Окей.
И они викаат дека сакаат a peaceful world, дали се human rights a peaceful thing, и дали oppressed people peaceful.
Окей. Can pause.
Можам дека од читалското страње, ама ја викат не деотира на тоа.
Значи, на поинтите што ги има
Come closer. Are you ready for cross-ex?
Yes, I am.
So tell me, you said that the government has a responsibility to its people, right? What are these responsibilities that the government has for its people?
The responsibility of the government is to provide services, to provide rights, health
provide-
service,
okay.
education are rights. The government
So
provides them.
when a government does not provide these rights, is it going against its responsibility to the people?
Of course, then the government is illegitimate.
So the government which doesn't provide people with its rights is not legitimate. Thank you.
Yes, but
No-
no government is better. Any government is better
no.
than no government.
Thank you. Now, can you tell me? You said your case was about. You had an example of Venezuela, right?
Yes.
You said that the people chose the democracy over what CIA tried to implement on them, right?
Yes.
So the people here chose something that they wanted, right?
Yes.
So wasn't our case mainly giving the people the right to choose, the right to see everything that is out there and pick what they want for themselves?
Yes, but as I said, the people have to do that themselves. Revolution can't be imported, and this is foreign policy. It's not revolution. This is other countries intervening in smaller countries' affairs that isn't going to be beneficial, as we can easily see from history.
So the people who wanted democracy, because of the foreign policy, did not choose democracy in Venezuela?
Because of the foreign policy didn't have anything to do with their democracy. It was their choice. They didn't need to be told they wanted
the
democracy.
people wanted democracy and chose democracy despite the foreign policy.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, on the point of human rights, are human rights generally a part of a peaceful world?
Justly, yes, we hope so.
So any measure which aims towards promoting human rights everywhere aims towards promoting a peaceful world, right?
It aims towards promoting human rights, but it could just as easily cause instability. And if we have a more peaceful world, human rights are easier because instability causes a justification for infringement on human rights.
And this competitiveness that you mentioned in your third argument, is that something that you would eradicate as a negative team to reach the utopia that you were talking about?
It's not a utopia, it's something that we should try to achieve because the consequences of not achieving it are dire. Iran and the US are already in a blind
But-
alley that they won't be able to get out of.
So the world is already facing this instability. These people are already suffering an infringement and an violation of their human rights, right?
Yes.
So what are your proposals to actually aid these people get human rights?
Our proposals are to do it properly. A foreign power cannot tell people they want democracy. Any people knows it wants to choose, and it's only a matter of time that any oppressive regime is going to be overthrown. When revolution is imported, and revolution, I say, it doesn't work. That's what I was trying to make out.
So you're saying that imported revolution doesn't work, and when we give people human rights, the people will not take these human rights if they want them?
No, the people will take human rights, but they have to get it themselves.
Thank you.
Симона, помните што поменал Кросекс и ќе му повториш за минута?
The past law. The time. Значи водата с легитимност.
Можеш саркастично да кажеш, we have a case. Или що? Ако знаеш. Защото не е удобно, що значи.
Okay, whenever you're ready. Can I start? Yes. Okay, good day, ladies and gentlemen, dear judges, dear opponents. What we have in today's debate is two things. The one thing, proposing a concrete policy on achieving and promoting human rights. What is the negative team proposing? We should not have foreign policies because they are not sincere. We should let the world run its course and do whatever they want until they get to democracy. We should never touch dictators. We should never say what they should do because they should be left alone. That is the very good resolution they have on this topic. On the other hand, we as a team live in the real world, not in the utopian world that was discussed. By the way, I like the utopian world, don't get me wrong, but we don't live in that kind of age, and we'll never live in that kind of age, as far as I'm concerned. Now moving on to your only rebuttal to our case, that if USA and Britain do this, it doesn't mean it's justified because they do bad stuff all around the world. Well, maybe that's true. You haven't had any evidence of that, so I'll call it a conspiracy theory. But even if that was true, let's talk about Saudi Arabia. They chop off people's heads and hands if you steal something. They break human rights. They have no respect for the woman in there. So you believe we should leave this go on its path? I mean, maybe they'll invent a very cooler way of chopping your head if we leave them do what they want. No, we should intervene. We should give people the choice. And this is what we as an affirmative team strive to in this debate. Giving people the choice. What will happen after? We're not saying that it will happen a revolution as you claimed. Maybe people will decide they want it where they are. That's okay for us. But what's important for us that we tried. We gave them human rights. We gave them freedom of expression. We gave them freedom of choice. Now moving on to your case. First argument is sovereignty. As was said in the cross-examination, if a state does not fulfill the needs of its people, it's not legitimate, therefore it doesn't have the sovereignty it did before. As we explained, these countries are not fulfilling the people's needs. They're not giving them the human rights, they're breaking them the human rights, and therefore we believe it's fair enough, as you agreed, to lose their legitimacy and for us to intervene and to give those people the rights that they deserve, because the government obviously has no idea how to do it or they don't want to do that. Now also you said foreign countries don't have any responsibility. Now I have to quote, as the preamble of the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights says, declaration constantly in mind shall strive to teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms by progressive measures, national and international, to secure their universal and effective recognition and observance, both among the peoples of member states themselves and among the people of territories under their jurisdiction. All the countries that we mentioned are under the jurisdiction of the United Nations because they are part of the United Nations. And yes, you agree that they lose their sovereignty, so yes, the United Nations has pledged to defend the human rights and has pledged to do everything is possible in order to provide the human rights for these people. Therefore, we conclude that we have the legitimacy enough to go in these countries, and we have, because they don't have any sovereignty, because as you agreed in the cross-examination, they lost it once they broke the human rights of their people. And yes, they do break it. Now, second thing, you say it's just for PR. They're intervening just for PR. Well, I like hearing conspiracy theories movies, but I hate it in debate. No evidence of that, just saying it's just for PR. It's fair enough, it's just for PR. Well, we say it's not for PR. But even if it is for PR, if they provide the human rights to these people, fair enough. They get what they... Okay, they get what they deserve. They get the PR, but those people also get the human rights. In your case, in your proposals, nobody gets anything. Moving on to your next reply. You said the Iraq was replaced with an anarchy and an intervention, and our intervention is the same with the Iraqi intervention. No, because the Iraqi people never knew that they are going to be bombed. And they never chose to be bombed. In our case, in our intervention, we are providing them with information. If they want to choose the information, they will choose it. So we leave it in their own will. We are not forcing them to do something, as in the case of Iraq and Afghanistan, that proved that it's not the same as our intervention. Second point, stability. The people and the government want stability. Yes, they want stability, but let's look how do they achieve it. In the USA or maybe in democratic countries, they achieve it through debate, discussion, parliament, so on and so forth. In the oppressive regimes, they achieve it through chopping off hands, chopping off heads, and threatening people with their lives if they don't do how the government wants it. Third point, you say, what kind of a world do we want to live in? And I agree. I want to live in the world you proposed. But we don't live in that kind of world. Yes, it's all mixed up because we agreed to live in an international community. We agreed to globalization. What you propose that every country should be led on its own, never interfere in anybody else's country policies and so on, no matter what they do. We say we are globalized. We live in a globalized world and we need to do some kind of things. And again, from the end of my speech, we're not forcing the people anything. We're just giving them choice. We're providing them the human right of expression, of freedom of choice. And what your proposal is, I must mention one more. Your proposal is, okay, that's why I beg you to vote affirmative. Sorry I didn't have the software, sorry. Кого сейчас? Лошади?
Nie, tu ładnie.
Io non ne ho casa, la mamma io intervento io vado. Особено првиот што ни многу.
Are you ready for the cross-ex?
Yeah.
Okay. Firstly, you say you want to live in a utopia, but you know it's not possible. The point was, however, that the kind of foreign policy that we are criticising justifies, or at least provides an excuse for dictators such as Vladimir Putin in Russia, such as the regime in Iran, which isn't one dictator but a whole bunch of clerics, to repress their people and to take anti-democratic action.
Okay, you obviously missed a minute in your speech. Where's the question? I don't see your question. It's a cross-examination. Where's your question? Very
The
nice.
question is why don't you see why does it not provide justification?
Well, it does provide justification. You yourself claim that if they don't provide the needs of its people, then they lose their sovereignty. If they lose their sovereignty, then other countries can try to provide what the people needs. And your proposal is, let the people just roll on their course in those states. Let them be chopped, let them be, deprived from their human rights and so on and so forth.
However, this kind of foreign policy can provide the origin of these regimes, no?
What kind of foreign policy?
The kind of foreign policy
Actively
that we are
circumventing.
criticising. Espionage.
Well,
Intervening.
sorry, but we're not talking about espionage. We're talking about actively circumventing the internet, censorship. It's not espionage. I mean, very cool that you know the story about Snowden and so on and so forth. I know it too, but it's not espionage.
But it's a parallel, it's breaking the laws.
How is it a parallel? Tell me.
It's a parallel because they're intervening in other countries' affairs secretly, they're breaking the laws, they're coming
Well,
in.
it's not very
instability.
secret. For example, if you do a foreign policies should be known around the world, and you should know that people and countries will do this kind of foreign policy, so it will not be secret. People will know it. The governments of the oppressive regimes will know it. It's not secret. It's not espionage.
Okay. Secondly, you talked about the example of Iraq. You proved yourself that this is the last important example. What about the other example? What do you say about this?
What example?
The Venezuelan example, in which a coup was
Again,
orchestrated by the CIA.
I must say, I'm very sorry that I heard. I'm glad, but I'm also very sorry that I heard many conspiracy theories. You say CIA tried to overthrow the government. Where's the evidence for that, sir?
You've also claimed that the
No,
bombing
wait.
of Baghdad is a conspiracy theory.
No, the bombing of Baghdad happened because they bombed it.
It's common knowledge that the government of Venezuela...
So it's common knowledge for you to know the CIA doing things. Shouldn't be a CIA, be a secret service, and you not knowing things? That's why they call them conspiracy theories.
It's common knowledge, if you have any kind of political intelligence, that the government of Venezuela at the time was not supported by the US. It was heavily criticizing the US, and of course it was completely logical that the secret services of the West would overthrow this government. It was also quite clear that the new government was Western backed. The new government began to shoot protesters in the streets. What do you say to this?
I say there's no official document, there's no official policy. It's not a foreign policy actually done by the CIA. They tried to kill, they say they tried to, can I answer? Yeah, they say they tried to kill, the Cuban president for like 800 times, but there's no evidence about it. So start running on real, okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Tig. Hi, Ronan. My teammate Keane has introduced our case on why active circumvention of censorship is not a valid foreign policy. Policy. I would like to elaborate on this. I would like to talk about sovereignty of nations. It is a state's responsibility to protect the populations and the interests of the state and of the people. And any intervening state, whatever its actions, does not actually have a stake in the welfare of the state or its people. For this reason, it cannot be trusted to make the correct decisions of how it's going to go about circumventing this information, and it can also not be trusted in what information it's going to circumvent. Bear in mind that you can't bring all of the internet to people. That's not going to happen. If you're circumventing information, if you're giving them the information that you say that they need, you will be giving them whatever information you gather together to give to them. Now, that information, of course, at some point is going to be biased. All information is biased in its own way, or certainly most non-factual information is. Oh, 4 minutes. Very well. In delicate climates, in delicate countries, one word can set off a cascade of troubles. My teammate Keane gave a fantastic example of this, example of Iraq, for example, where a government, it may have been totalitarian, it may have been a dictatorship, but it was a government and it worked. And it had services, it had fire brigades, policemen, hospitals, schools, whatnot. It had all of these things, was then replaced by total anarchy, and anarchy is not in the interest of the state or of the interest of the people. Anarchy is not in the interest of anybody, really. And it should be avoided at all costs. I would also like to talk briefly about the benevolence between nations. Benevolence between nation states must be established. States must have healthy relationships with one another. They must have positive feelings towards one another. Negativity cannot be established between nations. Now, going and undermining other nations and undermining what they stand for by circumventing information and undermining all of their own policies is, whether you like it or not, aggressive, or at least aggressively assertive. You are undermining other nations. This will not create anything except conflict. It cannot create anything except conflict, whether this conflict is within the state or outside of the state. It will create conflict. Conflict is not good. You can see examples of conflict, of a lack of benevolence between nations in the First World War, for example, where the situation broke down to the point where they staged a massive war which killed many millions of people and was generally not good for anything. Which is generally the way wars are, which is why we would like to encourage the build-up of benevolence between nations by avoiding such aggressive foreign policies and assertive tools. To wrap up what the argument has been so far for our case, on why this motion should be opposed, it is that it sidelines people. It is not in the interest of the people or of the interests of the state. It can be biased in whatever way you choose, and there are many arguments for whether it will or will not be biased, but it can be biased, and that is dangerous in itself. It can create conflict with, within, or without or outside of the nation. As in, it can create perhaps civil war, which could replace, if the information was biased, say, a working state with many services where the welfare of the people is quite high up with God knows what. And it can also, of course, has the chance to create conflict outside of nations, which is also bad. And this is why I would beg everybody to vote for the opposition. Thank you.
How much time do we have?
A moment. You have 3 minutes.
Give us one.
Что за Саша пришел, конечно?
Что можешь никакого напряжения.
Информации.
You can pause.
Hello.
Hi. When can we start?
Now, I believe.
Oh, sorry. Would you live in a country that gives you some biased information and mainly non-biased information, or no information at all?
I would live in a country that gives me no information at all.
No information at all.
Yes. I would rather not be biased.
Why? Why no information at all?
Because biased information can lead to incorrect autonomy.
Why do you wear a gray shirt instead of a red one?
Because I prefer the color grey.
And what if you didn't know that gray exists? Which color would you wear?
But grey has to exist, it's a shade.
Yeah, but if you didn't know it existed, like if you had no information that gray existed, you would wear red, right?
But that is just like, for example, freedom. It is a truth that is inescapable. You cannot ignore the possibility of its existence, or as
Yeah,
the
but
fact is.
if you've never seen gray ever in your life, and no one ever told you that the gray shirts exist, you would wear a red shirt, right?
You can't not see grey.
But those people, you said that you would live in a country with no information at all.
Yes, but certain informations will always exist. We are human. We come to certain conclusions on our own. We do not need to be told absolutely everything. We do not need to be
Are
piped
human
down.
rights a good thing
Yes.
in our world?
Of course.
Is having human rights bad?
No,
No.
never has been.
So the people in this world, as your speaker stated, want order, right?
Yes, stability.
How is killing people in Syria order?
It's not.
It's not order, but you stated that the government
still
and the
better
people.
than anarchy.
But you stated 70,000 people dead is not anarchy, according to you.
70,000 people dead is an atrocity, according to me.
Okay, but it's a way of anarchy. I do not know the word, sorry. Okay, fair enough.
That's okay.
So, how are we breaking order in this world? By giving the people a right to express and inform.
Because if you give the people biased information, then they decide to overthrow something that is actually a good thing, you replace.
So
Just
you say that the countries that are censoring things are better to live in than the democratic countries that do not censor things because they have some bias. Are you saying that the countries there do not bias information? They have only one national television and nothing else.
Not in every case, no. I mean, in a lot of cases, perhaps it would be.
Are you aware that
beneficial
in
thing,
Syria
but
there's
not
only
in
one
every
national
single
television in the entire country that is controlled by the government?
case. Yeah, and you could also.
In your statement is that those information are not biased.
Of course, it's biased.
Of course, it's biased. Thank you. So even the small number of information you admit that they have in those countries are biased.
Is replacing that with other biased information going to help?
Okay, fair enough. So you say that Iraq is ruined, right now.
Not necessarily ruined, but it was
It
not a
has
good
bad
thing for
infrastructure and bad health insurance and everything, right?
Yes.
So tell me how this entire thing is connected with internet censorship and our 11 countries that we mentioned in our first speech.
This is a possibility again. What America did was not circumventing.
When did we ever state that we will go in with tanks? We are only saying that we will give them a freedom
The
of
effects
expression.
will be the same. They brought people up and they encouraged them to rise again, and they replaced the state that was there with anarchy. Now, anarchy did not help anybody, and through correct internet censorship, through internet censorship, you do run the risk of replacing a state with anarchy, because it is risk to be biased. Thank you.
Он больше за bias, благо. Отворим това за bias. Така jednostavno си запамете държави много по-за bias от си да знаете.
Чекай само зборам да се... Имам две клеш. Што значи да кршиш човекови права и зашто треба, зашто мораме да влеземе. Што е ги нашem много чуден случай.
Молам, врати го нашия случай, защо? Збори за нас. Збори за freedom of expression. Збори како е битно freedom of expression, како е битно freedom of choice. Збори те работи. Можеш да личите си.
Некој се фати.
Че може да кажеш така, го прифати нещо принцип. Прифати дека е добро си разбираш. Прифати дека се што ми рекла е дека е лошо да се импозира.
Да се прават биасни информации.
Да се импозира револуција и демократија. И сега ние не викаме дека импозираме револуција и демократија. Ние им даваме избор на тие луѓе таму, ако сака да го земат и да се направат нешто како се. Без тоа да се рока. Имаш по-добре.
Half a minute left.
Perfect.
За сите работи што ги имаме, кажа, освен дека се прави, ништо не добро за тоа. Избори за conspiracy theories. No evidence whatsoever. No audacious claims based on mere and documentary movies alone.
Да.
Ајде.
Time.
Станах точно на време лоши подкаст.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, what we heard from the negative team in this debate is that, yes, our first argument is true. these people have their human rights broken, and yes, we should give them more human rights. And that yes, this policy is a legitimate policy, but that it is not okay to impose democracy, because imposing democracy is a bad way of doing it, because it's very violent, and because America comes in with tanks into Iraq and all these conspiracy theories and so on and so on. Now, with my two clash points, those being what does breaking human rights mean and why do we need to intervene, I will try to sum up this debate and to point out to you how actually negation didn't refute affirmative's arguments and how affirmative won this debate. Now, on the first point, what does breaking human rights mean? Negative have affirmed that human rights are one of the key values of today's society, one of the key values of democracy, and one of the key values that people need in order to live in a legitimate state. Additionally, during Cross, Negative affirmed that a state, a government, a country, which does not provide its people with human rights is not a legitimate country, is not a sovereign country. Hence, it is okay to intrude in this not legitimate country, in this not sovereign country, in order to provide the people with the thing that its government should be providing, but is not doing so, meaning to provide these people with their human rights. And let's look back at what we're trying to do with circumventing this censorship of the internet. These days, the people who live in the regimes that we have mentioned have no right to expression on the internet, on the biggest site for expression in the world. They have no right to freedom of choice, what information they want to read, what information they need. They have no right to political development because they have no right to be in opposition to the government and to express their views on the internet against the government or against anything that is happening around them. And finally, they have no right to personal development because they have no right to see what information is out there and to choose what they want, what type of person they want to be. These rights are not okay. These rights are okay, and the government not providing these rights is something that we would seize if we were to circumvent internet censorship in these countries. Now, on the second point of why we need to intervene, I believe I have made it clear enough that these people need our help. But let's try, as affirmative, we have tried to explain why it is exactly our help that these people need. The world today is too globalized. Internet is one of the key examples of how close this global village has come together. And we have already signed the preamble, the Declaration of Human Rights. We have said that we would use progressive measures to help nationally and internationally. And all the countries that we have mentioned are UN member states, which means that the other UN member states, which already provide their people with these rights, have a responsibility to do what they have signed to do. Now, what we're trying to say is, from the very first argument, from our example with the green tea, is that the people in these regimes do not have another choice beside green tea, meaning that the people in these regimes do not have a choice that is beyond what they see from the government. We're not trying to impose democracy, ladies and gentlemen. We're trying to give these people apple tea, orange tea, black tea, Earl Grey, and so on. What we're trying to do, ladies and gentlemen, is to give these people a choice to see what they want, whether they want to live under this oppressive regime, whether they want a theocracy, a democracy, anything so on. And we believe because these people want their human rights, as every national person will do so, they will choose what they see is fittest for them. And if this is democracy, and if the fighting for this democracy causes instability, then so be it, because it comes from the people. It does not come from our policy. Let me repeat that. Our policy will not cause instability if the people do not want to cause instability. And if the people want to cause instability against the government, which is not legitimate because it does not provide them with human rights, then it is okay for the people to rebel on their own. But our policy does not impose democracy on them. It gives them a freedom of choice. And finally, on the point of biased information, which came up in the second speech, we have stated in Crossex that information provided is better than information not provided. And the information that these people are getting is already very biased towards the state, ladies and gentlemen. And anything that is provided outside of this will be unbiased information. So, I beg you to vote against the conspiracy theories, to vote against this immature idea of imposing democracy, to vote for giving people their human rights, to giving them something that the government doesn't provide them with, and I vote for you to give the people a right to choose something other than green tea. Thank you.
Готов зараз.
Poți să treci tare. Poți să doar sex tare. Se că ți trebuie. Не попробуй.
На скоро начав.
Ce timp pozdă. Ce timp pozdă vină у нас.
Didn't see him go here. What? Where's he going? Alright, okay. Fair play.
3 minutes?
Did we have to make that much of a lot? Did you have time? It was 3 minutes. Oh,
He'll be
He'll be
speaking Spanish.
grand. He's Roman. He does that kind of stuff all the time.
So long as he pulls his pants up and doesn't come out of floor with it, it's
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes he can come back and not let me
2
work
minutes
with it.
more.
Oh, they have 2 minutes, okay. Plenty of time to do with everything else.
He comes back like a gold chain on and a white speeder. Timberland boots and a scully cap. But what else I'm Ronan?
To se nabahalo, že?
Potrebo na večeru?
Made of pure gold. That would be fun.
Porikam sliču.
Not late.
Your time. You have 1 minute more, by the way. So if you need to go anywhere else.
Calm down. any second now. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to prove 2 points to you today. 1, the opposition are right, and 2, the proposition are delusional. Okay, I'm going to do that by first going over our own points and reminding you of what Keen and Thaig so expertly laid out to us, and second, I'm going to go over the proposition's points and show you why they don't hold at all. Okay, first of all, our points. Keen, when he first stood up here, told you that humans seek to gain things when they interfere in foreign affairs. Okay, the proposition challenged this and says, "Where's your proof?" The proof is in that it is in both human nature and a state's job to look out for one's own above the citizens of its other country, as revealed so dramatically under cross-examination. Okay, states will seek to influence other states by giving them the information, not that they need, but the information they want them to know to increase their own influence. And we see in Venezuela just how far countries are willing to go to interfere with other states for their own gain. Secondly, we think that anarchy is not good. We think that 100 people dying under a regime is much better than 1,000 people dying under anarchy. We think that these situations are normally delicate and need to be handled with a bit more care than just telling everyone that their father was tortured and murdered and causing anarchy. No, we think that if we can use the carrot over the stick, that we should. Finally, we like making friends. Okay, we think that good relations is better for countries and better for oh, there's a microphone, it works, is better for the world. Why? Because bad relations, such as the relations between France and Germany after World War I, lead to other world wars, namely World War II. Okay, now that I've reminded you of the points that Keen and Thaig have so wonderfully put to us, I'm going to move on to the propositions. The proposition tried to portray us as mean, evil people who say, no, go on, leave them there to suffer and die. No. We realize that these people are suffering. We realize that something needs to be done about it. We just think that 100 people dying is better than 1,000 people, okay? The propositions seem to think that the proposition give out to us for pretending we live in a utopia. Yet they pretend to live in a utopia of their own, where everyone are saints who give out free tea and tell people what they want to know, just purely for their own benefit. No. As Keen has shown, human nature and a state's duty towards its people prevents this from happening. States will interfere with other states and cause them harm. Next, speaking of utopias, the proposition give out to us for trying to live in one. We argue that a state as close to a utopia as possible is a good state, and that even if a utopia may be unattainable, that we should argue towards that we should work towards the best international relations that we can, so that we can live in the world closest to utopia, and so the best world that we possibly can, okay? We like that kind of thing. And yes, so ladies and gentlemen, our arguments still stand, and the propositions just seem to miss the point. They seem to think that we just want to leave them there in the countries to suffer and die. No. We want to save lives, okay? But we've a bit of sense in the way we're doing it, okay? So, ladies and gentlemen, think of the children who are going to die in the anarchy that results from the proposition's proposal and vote opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. So, if you want to step outside, we'll get you when we have a decision.
It was a really good debate. Really enjoyed the debate. Really enjoyed it.